Hey, besties and bosses, happy Tuesday. How are you all? How's everyone's week going? I feel like it has been a very big week for almost everyone in my clients. So I know there's a lot going on in the world. So happy to connect with you, happy to hang and dive into today's topic. So today what we're going to chat about is content strategy. Specifically, I want to give you a peek behind the scenes at my content strategy and share a little bit about how I think about my content strategy, as well as really the specifics and practical steps I'm taking. Something I think I shared in, if you're on my email list, and what I was talking about with this live stream, something that I'm really proud of and that I love about my content strategy is it's really what's allowed me, and I believe what's allowed me to build out a fully booked coaching practice, but also to stay fully booked and to have a multi-six-figure business and continue to grow without Facebook ads or without ads in general. And while there is nothing wrong with ads, there's absolutely a time and place for ads. I have plenty of clients who use ads in their business. This is not a conversation about, ads being bad or good, but it is to say you can do this in your business without ad spend. And I think one of the ways that you can leverage online marketing and really leverage marketing in your business without spending a bunch of money on advertising, if that's something you don't have the resources for in business, is really leveraging the power of content marketing. So want to chat a little bit about just the mindset behind that, the way I think about the strategy, and then we'll talk about some of the practicals. This is something that has come up for a few of my clients, or they've been asking me questions about. So I realize it's one of those things I don't think we've ever talked about, just some of the really basic practicals of what I'm doing with my content strategy. As we're chatting through this, and hey, all of you who are jumping on live, whether you're watching now or on the replay, say hi, but also let me know if you have questions. This is really, I wanted to bring this because it was coming up for some clients that had questions around it, so I figured many of you probably have questions as well. So happy to answer any questions that come up for you, anything that doesn't feel clear. I want this to be a resource for you. So always share the reflections, share the questions, throw them at me. So I thought where we could start is just a little bit of the thinking I have around content and why content. Hey, Miss Rachel. Oh, y'all. Rachel is one of my old school, one of my best friends in the entire world. So very excited to have her live. Rachel's saying I can bring you on camera. I'm not going to do that to you. It makes me so happy. I'm totally distracted for a moment with happiness. So what I thought we could chat about first, aside from my happy joy about Facebook connecting me with my bestie, is a little bit of the mindset behind the content strategy and why I think this is so valuable in your business, why this is something you can really leverage if you don't want to use ads, or even if you are using ads. And then I'll share some of the just practicals and really the way I think about those practicals, so that even if you have a different business than me or a different business model than me, you can really think about how to apply this specifically to your business. What I don't want you to feel like is you have to do this exactly like me. There is no such thing as, a blueprint. You don't have to have that copy and paste formula, but just so that you can take this and apply this to yourself. Keith says, great to be on live. I appreciate it. Hey Keith, nice to have you here. So happy to see you as well. Yay, all the fun faces. Hey, she says, this training is coming right on time. Yay, oh, I'm so happy to hear it. Throw your questions at me then, if you have any while we're talking through it. So in terms of the mindset behind content and content strategy, what I really think is important to remember when we're in business and when we're marketing, and what I like to think about when we're thinking about selling something, is I am such a firm believer. I'm sure if you've been hanging out with me, who have heard me say this more than once in many ways, but really at the core of sustainability and profitability in your business is connection. We hear so much about that know, like, and trust factor in the online space. And I think sometimes it almost, like, when we hear things a lot, we almost like, yeah, know, like, and trust. But like, what's really the thing that helps me make sales and make money? Like, what is really the secret? And what I want to say is, no, actually, it really is the know, like, and trust factor. And what know, like, and trust really and truly is that is connection, that is relationship building. And the money in your business is directly tied to the depth and quality of the relationships you build. And content, I believe, is such a powerful vehicle for building connections, particularly in the online space when you're marketing. And it's really such a powerful way to build those relationships, but to specifically build up. So we're talking about that knowability, so people know who you are, that likability, so you can, I think about marketing as repelling and attracting, repelling the people who aren't for you, attracting the people who are for you, and that trust component. I think we've been chatting quite a bit about trust in this group recently, and if you've been taking my free course Sell Out Without Feeling Like a Sellout, we've been talking about trust in there. Trust is such a core component of being able to sell. Really at any price point, you have to know, like, and trust the person who is selling to you. If you're going to take out your credit card or hand over some money, whether it's for a product or for a service, and particularly as you're getting into some of the higher ticket sales and offers, so much about what is driving sales is about that trust factor. And so one of the reasons I think content is so powerful, and it's like a crack for your sales process, and why I believe it's allowed me to, yes, get fully booked, but also to stay fully booked, is content creates trust. Hey Courtney, nice to have you. Oh, I've got all the awesome people on today. So happy I feel like I can see you, but I can't really see you, but so happy to see you on here. What I really think is something important to remember with content, because I know content takes time to create. Content takes time to, we're pouring time and energy into that, but it is one of the quickest ways to build up relationships and to build up that trust factor. Something that I also really believe when it comes to selling, this is something that I took for me from the acting world, is, I know we've talked about this before, but no one owes you anything. No one owes me anything. No one owes you anything in business. And I think that's such a hard pill to swallow, and something we don't talk a lot about in the online space, when we also talk a lot about manifesting and this whole idea of, you deserve it, which y'all deserve everything. And also no one owes anyone anything in the online space. And I really believe we have to earn our money, right? We have to earn our money. We have to earn the trust of the people we're selling to. And I believe we have to earn the energy exchange to make offers. And one of the ways we're able to earn all of that is by starting to share content that builds those relationships, builds that know, like, and trust, that trust piece that allows someone to feel safe enough to invest in your product or service, and really earns that energy exchange where you're then able to make offers as much as you want to invite people into your world, and where you have created enough of a value exchange and shown up enough to show, hey, I know what the heck I'm talking about. I have earned this conversation. That makes it so much easier for someone on the buying side to then feel safe enough to invest in your product or service, or safe enough to even think about hopping onto the sales page or hopping onto a call with you. Courtney says, I never realized how important consistent and valuable content is. I appreciate you for saying that, because I think that's something, I think sometimes when we think about content, I know because I hear this from clients, right? It's almost like, this is the thing I have to check off my checklist. This is what I'm supposed to do. Someone said, like, content. And I think we forget what's underneath it is really such a core piece. And hey, there are other ways to build relationships. I'm not going to say I have a few clients who have built very successful businesses and who are booked out and who aren't sharing content. So it feels very important to say there is more than one way to make money in your business. There's more than one way to get fully booked. There's more than one way, to create that even energy exchange, to build know, like, and trust, to build relationships. Content is not the only thing. And I think content is one of the most powerful vehicles. And it's one of the ways that all of us can differentiate and can leverage the online space, again, without needing to spend money on ads, if that's something you don't want to do in your business. And that really allows you to show up as a thought leader. We were talking about leadership last week, and to really start to help people understand not just the relationship you're building, but why are you an expert? Why should someone hire you? What do you bring to the table? I think of every piece of content as this little piece of collateral, and it's like a little salesperson that you're sending out into the world that's doing your work for you to build those relationships and to speak, yes, to share value, but to also speak to what it is you bring to the table, why you are an expert, why someone should consider working with you. Jordan says, content strategy is everything. That's my jam. I've got some content lovers here. This makes me so happy. I am right there with you. I would love to hear, Jordan, why do you love content so much? Because I think it's helpful for everyone to hear, because I also know for any of you who create content, content requires effort. Content takes time. It is one of the few things in my business I don't outsource, aside from the work with my one-on-one clients. Obviously, I can't outsource that. I would never outsource that. I don't outsource my content creation. I can't outsource being with you here right now, right? And the reason for that, it is so valuable, but it is a time, we do spend time creating content. There is a lot of, I think, energy for business owners. And I think sometimes it can feel like, well, what's the point? Why should I bother? So I think it's so valuable for us to understand before we dive into the practicals. Why is content even fucking important? Hey, Lorianne. Lorianne says, there's so many. The best way is the way each of us feels is the way. I feel like that is one of those, Lorianne, that's so smart. And it makes me, what's Yogi Bear? Yogi Bear, oh my gosh, I'm saying words here that are not making sense, but that feels like one of those why can't I think of what I want to say? Like mind gymnastics things where it's like the best way is the way each of us feels is the way, which is so true. And I'm like, oh, we gotta really wrap our brain around that. Lorianne hit it spot on. The best way is the way that each of us feels is the way. And content is a very powerful way, and something I think that part of my mindset behind content and the consistency around it is when you're showing up, and I know I've shared this before, but when you show up, when you say you will consistently with your content, we'll talk about the practicals in a moment, you're building that trust up with yourself and with your audience. So something I know to be true for me and my business is I've been showing up consistently for every day for years at this point, which allows me to strengthen my self-trust. With myself as a business owner, I do what I say. I know I can trust myself to show up when I say I will. And aside from literally the value I'm sharing through content, literally the relationships I'm building by showing up, by being here with all of you, by having a conversation with all of you, I know that every time I show up with you when I say I will, I'm putting a little deposit into our relationship bank, and I'm putting a little bit more of that trust into the trust bank where wait, this chick on the internet is who she says she is. This chick on the internet shows up when she says she will. There is some trust that gets built up every single time. And so I think that's just, again, just something I think about in terms of, why should we even spend time with this? That really helps me to commit consistently to the content creation. Mind gymnastics, yes, mind gymnastics. I'm like, I don't have it's the end of a day of calls in my brain. I'm like out of words. Mind gymnastics is exactly it. Also, just shout out to Lorianne. Lorianne is really brilliant with content as well. BTW. Vanessa, hey, nice to have you on here. Before we dive into the practicals, the last thing I want to say then, this is what we were starting to touch on, is I am such a big believer that when you show up and share free value and share free work, again, we're building up that know, like, and trust. We are building up the relationship, but you're also building up literal collateral in your business, but you're really also building up collateral with your audience. And I think that affords you the energy exchange or the right to sell more. And this was the example I was starting to share earlier, when I was still acting, just kind of going off this idea of no one owes you anything, something that I really remember from the acting world is when it didn't matter how talented you were. Every single time you wanted to book a job as an actor or an actress, you had to show up and audition. You had to show up and really show what you were going to bring to the table and show up the way you would on set to really earn the role and to earn your money before you even had the opportunity to work. And I remember even to get the opportunity for that audition, a lot of times you had to show up and do work for free to build up your credits and to build up your repertoire. And this didn't matter if you were the most talented fucking person in the entire world. You still had to do this to really open the door up to be able to essentially sell your work to a casting director or to a director. And it just always stuck with me. There was almost like an equalizer in that industry in terms of you had to show up every single time all over again to show hey, this is what I can do. This is what I can bring to the table. This is how I'm going to approach this role. And I think of content a little bit that way, where content really is a little bit of an equalizer, and it allows everyone who's a business owner just an opportunity, yes, to build those relationships, yes, to build that know, like, and trust, but to also show up and say like, hey, look, this is what it would, like, a little taste of what it would look like to work with me. This is me showing up and demonstrating to you, like, this is like what you can expect and why you should consider auditioning me and hopping on a sales call or hopping on over to my sales page. And I think if you think about it that way, it's really just such a beautiful way where it's like, this is just your opportunity when you share content to, yes, all of the other benefits we talked about, but really to just earn that opportunity to be able to sell. And for me, that also then makes selling feel a whole lot better, which is what we've been talking about in that free course. So if you're in my free course, this will reinforce some of what we've been talking about in there. Let me know if that makes sense. And just seeing, hey, Brittany, hey, Kiara, is it Kiara? Nice to have you all here. Let me know if that makes sense, because I think just some of the mindset behind it before the practicals is always helpful. Trying to think if there's anything else there I want to share. So it really is earning that opportunity to have that even energy exchange to be able to sell, and it makes selling a whole lot easier. I think of when you have a content strategy that is working for you, and you think about content strategy in the form of building relationships. What this does is it's going to bring in qualified leads, warm leads, whatever term you want to use, but people who are really aligned, hell yes clients, before you really get on the phone with them, before they get to your sales page. And so I think when we go back to like why has content allowed me to not just get fully booked, but stay fully booked, is I hear from people all the time when they get on the phone with me. They get on the phone with me after you've hung out with me for hours on a live stream and you've read a bunch of my posts. You already know me. You already understand what it would be like to work with me. So by the time we're having a sales conversation, it's so much easier because that relationship is already built. That know, like, and trust is already built. Versus if I just reached out cold to a bunch of people and asked them to get on the phone with me, there really would be no relationship established or none of that trust established. And I think that's just something to think about. Why content is so valuable, even if you are spending money on ads. The more of this you're sharing, the more work you're doing on the front end with your audience before they come through the door, that just has someone primed and ready to essentially buy because you've built up that know, like, and trust ahead of time. Sage says, wait, I need this resourceful info. Have I missed a lot? No, we're just, I talk a lot before we dive into a lot of it, so you haven't missed a lot. There will also be a replay, so don't worry. You can always catch the replay and just let me know if you have questions. Kiara says that's a great way to put it. Thank you. Keith says, totally tracking with you. Have to earn trust, and consistency is a good deal of it. Consistency is so much of everything. Consistency is such a trust builder. I think about, and then we'll talk into practicals, I promise. The practicals are really simple though. I think about my relationship with my significant other. Part of the reason we have so much trust with one another is we have consistently built up over time, situation after situation, after touch point, essentially, after engagement, after connection point, that has allowed us to, yes, build up that know, like, but really that trust piece. And I think trust is one of those things. You have to earn trust. It's very easy to break trust, and that's where the consistency piece comes in. And consistency, and then I will get off the consistency train. I think something to remember though with consistency is not only frequency. Consistency, particularly when we're talking about content, is also, are you consistent in your content with who you are in your business? Is your content consistent with how you work with clients? What's really important to me is, yes, I show up consistently, and that my message is consistent, but when I'm hanging out with you here, is the way I'm showing up with you live, is what I'm sharing in this live stream, is that consistent with what it would be like to get on the phone with me? And one of the things that's very important to me and that I'm very happy to hear is when someone gets on the phone with me, I'm exactly who they expect me to be. I show up exactly the way they expect me to. There isn't a disconnect, and that is congruence, but that's also consistency. So that's just something I would just plant a seed just to think about. There are different forms of consistency, because I think sometimes consistency freaks us out and we think it means like perfection all the time, and consistency does not mean all the time. It means more often than not, but I think so much of it really is also that congruence piece, and that's just, again, goes back to the trust piece. So let me know if that makes sense. Total side tangent, but I think helpful in this context. So let's pivot over to the practicals, because this is what I wanted to chat with. This is something that clients have been asking, and for me, this is something I've just been doing for so long, I forget that there was a time where this didn't register, and I think it's just helpful to map out, okay, we understand content, but really just from a very practical standpoint, how can you use content? What can you practically do? And I want to just break down, like, how can you show up daily, monthly, weekly, kind of how to think about that in your content to build up that know, like, and trust piece, to build up that consistency, to build up that even energy exchange where you're priming those relationships with people who are then going to be ready to buy. Marie says, one way to earn trust and develop relationships is to send a simple handwritten thank you card. Thank you for referring so-and-so to me. Yes, as a side thought, anyone who takes the time to write handwritten notes just gets a gold star, and anyone who makes the effort to go above and beyond and do something that's not expected, I think that's such a beautiful way to deepen relationships and just such a beautiful form of service that, just going back to thinking about sales, just always smart. So absolutely yes, and little side note there. Okay, so thinking about the practicals of content, and what I wanted to do is really just break down practically how I show up and how I'm thinking about this, because again, Lorianne said it so well. It's not about doing it the way I'm doing it, but really about what feels right for you. So take what I'm talking about here with the practicals and think, how can I apply this to my business? Not how can I do this exactly the way Kim does it, because your business might be very different than mine. Your relationship building strategy or style might be very different than mine. Cool. But again, I'm going to break down the practical way I show up and how I think about it. So again, everything I'm looking at with my content strategy is through the lens of relationship building and how we connect as humans. And when I think about building relationships with another person, what I know is we build relationships through a series of connection points, not just in one or two connection points. I mean, sometimes we have that person we meet, we have that intense conversation, we fall in love with them, or we become new BFFs. And even if that's the case, we still, to maintain a relationship and connection, we still have to keep checking in with that person, showing up for that person, having those exchanges, whether it's a friendship, whether it's a romantic relationship. And so the way I think about content is, how can you vary your content that you're sharing with your audience to mimic how we build and how we maintain relationships outside of business? So if you think about dating, what do we do with dates? How do we start dating? How do we build relationships when we're dating with a romantic partner? We do things like, sometimes we send text messages, sometimes we get on the phone and have a call, sometimes, maybe when it's not COVID, it's a little more challenging now. Sometimes you go out for, a romantic, really loving long date. Sometimes you go on a trip together. Sometimes you're both busy and you quickly grab a meal together. We have all of these different varying degrees of depth in the ways we're connecting with someone that over time builds up a relationship where we get to know them, where we get to like them, and where we get to trust them. And it's these different touch points built up over time and in different varied ways that really creates a full-formed relationship. For example, I don't know if any of you are dating, you don't every single weekend go on a weekend getaway with your significant other. I mean, if you do, have at it. I ain't mad at you. But most likely that's not all you're doing, right? You're also sometimes shooting them text messages in the middle of a work day, or you're sometimes both exhausted and just Netflixing and chilling. Is that still a term the kids are using? You're having different ways you're connecting. And so it's really the same thing with content. And the way I like to break it down, I like to think about it in terms of those buckets. And so in terms of what's the way that I'm having just that everyday exchange with someone, the way online, the way I would with my significant other, where we're just touching base every day. It's not always super deep. It's not always super in depth, but we're maintaining our relationship and making sure, I had a break earlier between calls. We had a quick little 5-minute connection point to maintain the relationship. And so I think about those as what are those daily touch points in content? And so for me, my daily content, my daily touch points with all of you that I'm building relationships with, those are my social media posts. And I really think of that, that's very similar to text messaging or that 5-minute conversation. I can only go so deep. Even if I'm pouring, my heart out into a post, there's only so far I can go in a written post. But you better believe I'm gonna show up every day, just like I'm gonna show up in my personal relationship every day to have that smaller touch point with someone. So I'm always thinking about what is that daily way I'm connecting with my audience? What's that daily way I'm sharing and connecting? And so very practically for all of you, what I would think about is, if you think about your strategy, what is that daily way you can show up through your content? What platform are your people on? What's your form of texting or having that 5-minute conversation? What is that daily connection point you can have? And what I would say, and this is going to sound maybe crazy, but I would say, I think that is in the hierarchy of content, I think that's the most important. Not because we're going to talk about some of the higher levels of content, because you can't maintain a relationship if you're not showing up every day, and maybe it's 3 times a week. It doesn't have to be every day for you. You get clear on what consistency looks like for you. But if you're not having those smaller little touch points with someone, a relationship fizzles out, right? Like if I think about some of my good friends, like if we're not saying and not having some sort of like those littler touch points, and we're going so far in between talking to one another, it's like you have to re-crank the relationship wheel. If you were dating someone and they just didn't talk to you for a whole month, right? You'd have to re-crank that relationship wheel up to talk to them. Whereas even if you didn't get to see them all the time because of COVID, if they were checking in with you on a regular basis and you were just having some connection points back and forth, that would maintain that relationship. Is this relationship analogy making sense for y'all? Because that's really and truly how I think about it in the online space. So very practically, I am showing up daily, and I'm really thinking about that as how do I maintain, how am I getting in front of my people, and how am I maintaining that relationship? Let me know if you have any questions. From that, I then also think about, okay, if I'm showing up in these ways to have these smaller touch points, if I want to deepen a relationship with someone and I really want to build that trust up, we were talking so much about that trust. I'm thinking again about this very similarly to how we build relationships offline, whether it's a romantic relationship or whether, it's a really great friendship. If you want to deepen that relationship with someone offline, you wouldn't just be able to text message them all day. There's only so far you can take a text messaging relationship. I love my boyfriend very much. If we only had those 5-minute conversations, at a certain point, we would lose, some of the depth of our relationship. And for us to be able to have more depth and to really have that trust and to really feel like we know and like each other and to maintain that, we have to put in effort. We have to put deposits into our relationship bank. Is it Joel Gottman who talks about the relationship bank with those positive deposits you put in your relationship bank so you can make withdrawals? We have to consistently put those deposits into our relationship bank to really keep our relationship healthy. And so for us, what does that look like? We take time out to have those dates. We take time out to cook dinner together and have a conversation across the dinner table. Sure, most of you who are in relationships will attest to that. At a certain point, if you stop putting those larger deposits into your relationship, what happens? You kind of just become roommates, or you just become strangers. Or if you're friends, you become more acquaintances and you don't have that same deep friendship. You have to put in that time, that deposit. And so I think about that with our weekly content. And so what I think about with content kind of similarly is, if I want to deepen my relationship with you, I got to show up at the dinner table. I got to have a date with you. I have to make an effort to do more than just show up in my daily written posts, which are very valuable and I love them. But I have to think about, what is that higher form of content that I can show up with weekly, that I can really commit to making a date around and inviting y'all to, just the same way, my boyfriend might invite me on a date, or I'd invite him on a date, where I can really show up and be present and go a little bit deeper that I could in a post, so that we're really, putting those relationship deposits into the relationship bank and deepening this relationship together. This right here, this live stream is an example of, this is my weekly content. I show up for this every week. And again, this is very simple. I just want you to understand the thought process behind it, because I think it'll help everyone here who has resistance around content, just think about how you can apply this to your business and why it's important. And so every week I am showing up. I have a date with you every week. Y'all know, Tuesday at 6 p.m., we have a date. I am going to show up and we are going to hang out, and we're going to hang out for usually about half an hour to 45 minutes. And I'm going to go so much deeper into a topic. And that is the way we are going to deepen our relationship and build that know, like, and trust. And this goes back to everything we were talking about at the beginning of this live stream. And that allows me to demonstrate to you my value. That allows me to show, hey, look, here's what I'm an expert in. Here's what I'm really great at. Let me not, like, I gotta like prove to you, but let me demonstrate and show to you, like, here's what I can bring to the table. And so you can understand what it would be like to work with me. And really so I can earn my money and earn my right to sell and really earn this relationship with you if you want to take it to the next step. The same way in a romantic relationship, I would expect my partner to earn our relationship and to earn, if we're going to go steady or live together or get married or whatever those next steps are in a relationship, I would expect my significant other to earn that the same way I need to earn that by making those commitments and deposits. Well, you know, this is making sense. So I really think about then practically, what are our daily commitments? Similar to text messaging, the social media post. What is that daily commitment? And then what is that weekly commitment you can make to your audience that's a longer form, deeper form of content? And what does that look like for you? So I think all of us have a different connection styles, different strengths. It does not need to mean yours it doesn't mean you have to go live the way I do. This is what works for me. I like to connect. I'm a coach. I work with my clients one-on-one. I want you to know me. It makes sense for me to show up on a live stream. For you, maybe longer form content, maybe that weekly connection, maybe it's a blog post, maybe it's a case study, maybe you're showing something. If you're a designer, in the design work you're doing, it does not need to look the way I'm doing it. It's more, can you think of it through the process of, wait, how do I deepen this relationship with my people? And how can I do this on a weekly basis? And really thinking about, like, how can I make this like a date where it's like people get, that you're going to show up at a certain time and your people know that they can expect that from you, because that puts those trust deposits in the bank as well. Something I heard on, what's her name? Emily Hirsch Marketing. She has a podcast, and something she was chatting about on one of her podcasts, I don't know, maybe it was a month ago, but she had someone on who she was interviewing, and they were really speaking to, there was some study or some data they had done that they had realized that they had to spend a certain number of hours of FaceTime with a potential client before that potential client was ready to spend, let's say, $1,000. And I think that's just something helpful to think about in terms of this like daily and weekly content and these deposits in the relationship bank. If, depending on the price point of your offer, the higher ticket your offer, the deeper the relationship you need to have with that person you're selling to. In general, there are exceptions to every rule. And to build a deeper relationship in general, that's more, we build relationships with time, the time and the quality of the depth of the relationship you're building. So the higher the price point of your offer in general, the more time and the more quality of content and engagement and relationship building you're going to want to spend with your audience to have them know, like, and trust you enough to want to spend that higher ticket offer. Versus if you have I have a lower ticket. I have a few do it yourself courses. Like I have a content course that's $49. That's a much lower ticket offer. To sell something like that, I don't need to spend as much. I can show up and share some posts, and you don't have to spend as much time to know, like, and trust me to part with $49. Versus for coaching, that's a time commitment, and that is a large investment monetarily. We're probably going to need to spend more time together and have a deeper relationship. And so I think that's something for you to think about in terms of, what are you selling in your business? What kinds of relationships, like how deep do you need to connect with your audience? And just thinking about what format and what that looks like from the daily and the weekly content. Let me know if that makes sense. And then I want to see, I think there's a few comments here. Hey Penelope, hey Fiona. Courtney says, making it easy for me so I can stay consistent has also been key. How can I do it in a way that I'll stick with and make sure that I actually show up? I love that, Courtney. I think that's such a great reminder as well. And where it's really the same thing in your personal relationships, right? How do you make it easy to show up in your personal relationships when there's a lot going on, or when you have family, or when you also have a business to run, and when you're also homeschooling, and all the various hats everyone is wearing right now. I think if you think about personal relationships, we have to get creative sometimes and think, how can I show up consistently in my personal relationship? How can I make this easy so I do want to show up? Same here. When we're taking a look at what's your daily consistency look like, what's that weekly? And when I say weekly, it doesn't have to be weekly for you. That's what I do. But really, the weekly content is, what is that deeper relationship building content you're sharing? And how can you make it easy for you? What does consistent look like for you? What is the way you can easily create content? And what is the easiest platform way to do this for you? What we don't want to do, I was talking with a new client about this recently. What we don't want to do is like try to work through all the blocks for the thing that is furthest removed from ease for you, because Kim does live streams and you feel like you're supposed to do. If live streaming feels hella fucking difficult for you, I love it. It works for me. But how can we find what's easy for you? And Courtney, thank you, because you gave me this as a prompt, but really for everyone watching now and in the replay, how can you find what's easy for you to hook into? How can you make this as easy as possible? Because that's what's going to allow you to create consistency and to show up consistently to build those relationships. And again, just in terms of how I'm thinking about this, I say daily, weekly, but really what we're talking about is, what are those micro consistent touch points? And then what are those deeper touch points you can create on a more consistent basis that isn't every day, to deepen the relationship with your people? Let me know if that's making sense and if you have any questions, because sometimes I know when I share analogies, I'm hoping that helps you understand, but I know sometimes that can also make it more confusing. So let me know if y'all have any questions about that. And then I will take a sip of water and go on to the next level. On top of the daily, weekly, and really again, that's like, what are those micro touch points and what are those deeper touch points that are deepening the relationship? Thinking about that practically in your business. The other thing I include in my content strategy that a lot of my clients include, and again, so important for me to preface this, for everyone's business model, it's going to be a little different. Not everyone needs to do this. I have plenty of clients. I have one client who does not do any of this and is fully booked. So this is not to say this is the rule. This is, again, what has worked well for me, and I want to show you how I'm thinking about it so you can take and apply what works from this to your business, but you don't have to do it exactly the way I do it. Kiara says that's a great point. I think you're replying to Courtney. The messages show up funny for me, so really important to preface that. But what I do and include in my content strategy is, I've got the micro touch points, which are those daily posts, those daily social media posts. I've got more of those, like those dates we're going on and having regularly, those more in-depth relationship builders, which I think of like having those dates, which is the live stream here, the weekly live stream that I'm committed to consistently. And then I think about, okay, I know I have a high ticket offer. I know you have to trust me if you're going to get on the phone with me and trust me to coach you. I want something that really allows us to like go even deeper into our relationship, and to have that opportunity for those of you who like are really thinking about working with me, like how can we do that in content and really get to know one another better? And so what I include in my content strategy is I offer a monthly free training. And and I know some people do, this is really what we call a conversion event in the marketing world. People do this when they're launching. I do this with my one-on-one work. If you've been here, you know every month we have some sort of free training. This month we have a 6-week free course, so it's a little different. But I'm always looking at what can I offer, and so that this does not have to be monthly for you, but really the way I'm looking at this and my mindset behind it is, if I'm thinking about a relationship and I'm thinking about how can I deepen a relationship, and really how can I show up and earn my trust and earn my money and earn that energy exchange to sell and to make offers and to invite people in to work with me and to create that deep level of, you trust me, you know I am an expert, you know I'm fucking great at what I do, you know if you get on the phone with me what you can expect. How can I deepen that relationship? And so what I do is I want to show up daily, show up weekly, and I want to show up monthly in some form of deeper content where we're just diving deeper into a topic where you really get to experience me and my work on a deeper level. The same way, if we think outside of business, if I think about dating, Okay, we've got those text messages and those, those phone calls or those daily quick check-ins. Hey honey, how you doing? What happened in your day today? We've got those dates where we're putting deposits into the relationship bank, where maybe we're having dinner together or going out to dinner. Spending time where, we're not just zoned out in front of the TV. And then once in a while, to keep the spark alive, right? To deepen the relationship, to bring that relationship to the next level, we're in a romantic relationship and with friends as well, in any relationship, we're making time. And I'm sure all of you in relationships would attest to this. You got to make time once in a while to do something special. To, if you always go to the same restaurant, if you always do the same things, once in a while you're like, do we take a trip together? Do we go to a new place together and have a new experience together? What can we do to continue to spend a little more quality time once in a while to really connect and get to know one another better, and to do something that feels special, where we're honoring and celebrating one another, and quite frankly, where we're putting a little skin in the game, because we're not taking one another for granted. If you think about going on a trip with a loved one, this is such a funny way to think about it, but I really think part of what's so magical about that, aside from travel and aside from all the wonderful things about, going away with someone, is you're both putting a little skin in the game in terms of time, and usually in terms of resources like money, that really say, hey, I am committed to this relationship. I'm putting some skin in the game to say, I want to make sure I'm investing in this relationship to keep it going and to keep it growing. Does that make sense? Because what I think about then with this, excuse me, I need a little water. I've been on calls all day, so sometimes on Tuesdays my voice is shot by the end of the day. So what I think about when we're thinking about this in terms of content is kind of the same thing. What can you offer from time to time? I do this monthly, maybe you do this quarterly, maybe you do this every 6 months. It does not need to look the way I do this, but what can you offer in terms of a relationship booster, in terms of a conversion event, in terms of something to deepen that relationship with your audience that also asks them to put a little skin in the game? Because you're going to show up in a way where you're like, hey, I am earning this trust from you. I am earning this respect from you. I am earning this relationship from you, but a relationship is a two-way street. And so if I'm going to show up and I'm going to really show up and deepen this relationship, I want to know you got some skin in the game with me. And so what I think about those types of events when I do that monthly event is I have a sign up, right? The skin in the game that I ask from people is, you got to sign up and get on my email list. I'm going to send you, it's going to be more than worth your while. We're going to have a free training. I'm going to send you a free playbook. This is, I think my trainings are more valuable than some courses that people sell and affix price tags to, but I still want a little skin in the game. I want to know if I'm putting this effort into our relationship, because that's what this is, right? It is a deposit in the relationship bank. That's what all of this content is. I want to know that you're committed to me a little bit, right? Like, you're going to show up for this relationship a little bit as well. And so I'm going to ask for some skin in the game. And that's going to be that email address, or that's going to be show up for a little bit of time. I know other people who maybe they're going to ask for a referral, or they're going to ask for a shout out. But the reason I'm sharing this and just the thought process behind it is thinking about this in your business. If you're thinking about, okay, those micro, more daily or more frequent, smaller touch points that are keeping the relationship going, and then thinking about the weekly or whatever is consistent for you, deep dives where you're deepening that, you're showing up and demonstrating that value. You're like, hey, I'm gonna show up consistently and build this relationship. And then thinking from time to time, if you want to be able to sell more, and you want to, whether you're launching a new program or you want to sell new spots, or you just want to really deepen that know, like, and trust with your relationship, starting to think, what can I offer? I do this monthly. You can get clear on what is that time frame for you. What is that deep dive? What is that equivalent to going on a trip with someone or having that special date? What is the deep dive I can show up as, where I'm gonna really demonstrate my value? I'm gonna really build that know, like, and trust, but I'm also going to ask for a deeper commitment for people on the other side so that we're in this together. And that's really how I think strategically about content from a mindset perspective, in terms of what I'm thinking about, in terms of how are we building relationships, but also how each of these different pieces function in my business, so that I'm also really clear on what I want to share where and why I'm showing up for these things. I'm never showing up for something just because, I don't know, someone does this, someone else does this, so this seems like a good idea. It's always very clear in my business as to what the intention behind showing up is, always from a place of service, and I always want to hang out with you all, and I love you all, but it's also very strategically tied into that relationship building. And I know very clearly what all of these different forms of content have to do with my marketing strategy and with my sales process and how they're serving you in terms of delivering value, but also how they're serving that relationship to open up the potential to work together. Does that make sense? And I share that because I want it just for you to think about, again, you don't have to do it the way I do it, but just so you can start to think about this in your own business. Why are you showing up the way you do? And how does this help support your sales process? How does this help support what you're selling on the back end? What do you need to include that maybe you're not, that would help make it easier for you to sell more? Hey, I see a couple other, it's funny, Facebook does this thing, y'all. It didn't used to do this, and now for not all of you, some of you, it's like showing, it's like so-and-so just showed up and is watching, but it doesn't do that for everyone. So I don't know why it does that for some of you and not others, but I'm happy to know those of you who are live. Let me know if that's making sense and if you have any questions, and then I will share one other piece that felt important on a practical level. In terms of what we're doing with content and content strategy. So something I'm always preaching this to clients, and I think this is just helpful to think about with content. I am such a big believer in, if we're thinking about these three forms of content, right? I'm calling it daily, weekly, and monthly. How are you showing up daily? How are you showing up weekly? How are you showing up monthly? For you, it might not be daily, weekly, monthly. We could say, what is that micro, more consistent touch point? What is that deeper dive? And then what is that like little skin in the game, like deep dive for all the deposits in the relationship bank? What are those for you? And what I really am a stickler with is being very clear on how do we create content once and use it in all of these formats. So if you are a business owner, content does take time, and it is a beautiful tool and strategy for all the reasons we talked about. And it does require time and effort and thought processes on your part. I know anytime I'm showing up here for all of you, I'm spending time outside of this to really think about like what would be valuable for you and what do I want to share for all of you. And so it's really important to me as a business owner to be smart and to leverage my time really well and to be clear on how am I creating content that is absolutely valuable, but now that I very clearly know where I'm showing up when, every day, every week, and every month, how can I create something once and share it in as many ways as possible throughout those different ways we're engaging, instead of reinventing the wheel? Because I think what happens and where people get really spun out with content, and where content, like suddenly you're a content production company instead of a business that shares content for content marketing, is we hear, okay, daily content, weekly content, monthly content, and we think these are all separate pieces we need to create. And so like you're creating the daily content, you're creating the weekly content, you're creating the monthly content. That's a lot of freaking work, right? And what I think about instead is how can you get clear on what is the easiest way for you to create content? Is it easier to write those smaller posts? Is it easier for you to show up on a live stream? Is it easier for you to do the deep dive training? Like, what's the easiest way for you to create? And using that as, I know I've shared this before we probably talked about this like a year ago. So I'm gonna, for some of you have heard me use this analogy, but I'm gonna use it again because it's worth repeating because people are still asking me about it. Does anyone drink kombucha? For those of you who don't drink kombucha, do you know how kombucha is made? It's that effervescent drink. I'm obsessed with it, but I used to live in California, so we drink it out there. But it's this effervescent drink, and it's made from something called a SCOBY, which is this like really gross, slimy looking thing that basically creates this fermented tea. And it's one SCOBY, you can make a big pot of tea, and you can like break off other SCOBYs and keep making more tea. So I think about content that way and getting clear on what is the big SCOBY in your content, what is the motherboard of your content, and then how can you use that to repurpose and make your smaller, your pot of tea to then make little bottles of tea into like one SCOBY. You can break off pieces and give it to all your friends, and they can all make kombucha as well. Silliest, grossest example ever, but that's something I want you to think about really practically when we're taking a look at these different levels of content and the different levels of content in terms of how you're using them to deepen relationships, and think about where's the easiest place for me to create content, and then how can you use it to create your other forms of content so you're not reinventing the wheel. I'll give you some examples here so this makes more sense. I want to see the comments, but I'll tell you how I used to do it and how I do it now and how some of my clients do it, because I think that will hopefully simplify. Courtney says, oh my God, yes. It's such a gross example, but I love kombucha and I'm glad that resonates. Kiara, is it Kiara? Kiara says, thanks for breaking this down so well. I've been struggling with overwhelm thinking about creating value posts. Courtney says, drinking one now. Fiona says, love that analogy. It's the sourdough starter of content. It's totally the sourdough starter of content. Exactly. So what we want to think about when we're thinking about those different levels of content is, what is the sourdough starter? What's the kombucha SCOBY for your content? And I'm going to use myself as an example, and I'll show you kind of two ways to go at it, because you can go at it from the micro, the daily, and use that to build out all the way up to, those deeper levels, or you can go from the deeper levels and break it down to make those smaller forms of content. What I used to do at the start of my business and what was easiest for me, I didn't go live at the start of my business, y'all. And this is really helpful for you to know in terms of there is no right way, find what works for you. I worked a 9 to 5 when I started my business, and it was a demanding 9 to 5 with long hours. And so going live at consistent hours didn't really make sense. And so I did all written form content, and I wrote a blog post. And so what I used to do is write a blog post weekly. That was my weekly, that was my relationship deepener. And then I would take that blog post and I would break it up into chunks, and that would be my daily content. So I was creating one piece of content and I was breaking it down into pieces. That became my daily content. And then every month or every, I don't say I was doing the monthly, I don't know if I was doing it as I would say necessarily monthly. That relationship deepener was probably a little more spread out because I was at my day-to-day job. But I would take some of those blog posts and I would pull them together to create either a guidebook or an ebook or a training. But I would literally reuse what I had and just put it into a new format where I could package it together. And there was my larger form of content. As I transitioned out of that day job and I had more time open up and I started going live, what I started doing, I went through a phase where it was a lot easier for me to write smaller pieces of content. So I would write out I post every day, so 7 pieces of content, but centered around one topic. And those 7 pieces of content, that's when I started going live. I would actually create a blog post and create a live stream out of that, which we still do to this day. So I would take those 7 pieces of content, they would kind of get stapled together. So that would be my daily, my micro relationship builder. I would take those 7 posts and pull a few of them together to create a blog post. And then that would be sort of the SCOBY for my live stream. That would be the starter that I could then riff off on a live stream. And so if you were watching my lives, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, I've been here for a while, y'all. Any of those lives, I would have always written it first. If you were on my email list, you would have gotten the blog post first from me. And then I'd show up and we'd jam on it live together. And then I would do a free training, and same thing. I would usually find one of those topics and just go deeper into it on the training. Onto our monthly live training. And so I say that so you can see, and then I'll tell you how I did this in reverse. Rarely was I reinventing the wheel. Maybe for the deep dive training, I would include some going deeper. I would include new things, but it wasn't like I was thinking of 7 different posts, and then I was thinking of a weekly blog post, and then I was thinking of how to show up live for everyone, and then I was thinking of a new topic for the monthly training. Everything was really just I was taking it, sharing it in a new format, and literally for my blog posts, stapling posts together or using that material as the starter, the SCOBY, to go live. And so I say that because, again, you might have a different way you create content, but if it's easier for you to write daily or to have those smaller, maybe you don't write daily, maybe you do Instagram stories every day. If that's really easy, you can use that as your SCOBY starter to then grow your deeper form of content that you're going to show up with weekly or monthly by taking a few of those pieces and just making something, connecting them together to make a longer form piece of content. Let me know if that's making sense. And reverse of what I do now is it's easier for me now, particularly with, I need one more sip of water, guys. I'm always so dry. I think it's also the winter air at the end of the day. So what I do now, particularly because I am fully booked and very fully booked, so I'm on calls all day and my team is supporting me with a lot. So what makes a lot more sense for me now, and what's a lot easier for me now, is I kind of do this in reverse, right? It's almost like I take the pot of the sourdough and now I'm slicing it into pieces of bread. So meaning each week I have my content topic for a live stream. So I know what I'm going to share with you. Like, for example, here today, when the live stream is finished, we take this live stream, we literally transcribe it, and we break this down. My team supports me with this. We break this down into social media posts. So we pull content from this gets broken down into social media posts, which then become those daily posts. And I do a little editing, we do a little zhuzhing, but I'm not recreating the wheel. I'm not like thinking of new content. We're taking what I've already talked about, we're turning that into social media posts. So those become those daily touch points. This is my weekly deep dive. We also take those and turn them into a blog post. I'm not doing anything new, right? I'm like sharing this with you because I know many of you have told me how helpful. Someone last week was saying how much they loved the email they got and the blog post they got. And just so you can see this, it doesn't take away the value. It doesn't take away how beneficial it is, because not everyone's watching a live stream. Not everyone's reading my posts. Not everyone's reading my emails. And we consume content differently, right? You're going to consume differently on this live stream than you are when you see a little nugget in a post. And we need to hear things over and over again to learn them. So when you're creating content this way, it's also helping you to teach your audience, not just to build those connections and relationships, but to help people understand what you're sharing, because we learn in different ways, we learn through different formats, and we need to hear things over and over again in slightly different ways to be able to understand them as we're consuming. Anyway, so I go live on here with you on Tuesday. That turns into our daily content. And then in terms of our deep dive, my deep dive trainings, oftentimes what I'm doing is at this point, I've been doing them so long, we have a lot that I can rinse and repeat. But a lot of times I find out from doing these weekly pieces of content what y'all are most interested in. And, you ask me questions, you let me know. And so that often becomes the SCOBY to help inform some of the future trainings where I'm like, oh, okay, someone, I think it might have been Tiffany, a few months ago, was like, could you teach us more about sales? Like, I want to hear more about sales. Well, look, now we have a free sales training that you can sign up for 6 weeks, a free sales course. That was informed because I know what my clients want help with. I know y'all are telling me, and I've done quite a few live streams on sales. So I'm able to take from there. It made making that longer form free course for you so much easier because I've got a lot of this content already. So I'm sharing that with you because I know that it can seem overwhelming when you're like, oh my God, there's all this content, like daily posts and weekly posts and monthly. But I want you to see how really, if you can start to look at this as it is all part of a whole, and if I can just hook into what's the easiest way for me to show up and create content, what is my SCOBY? And then from my SCOBY, how can I use that to essentially repurpose, but not just repurpose where we're regurgitating the same thing, but quite literally to pull and pluck out pieces in new forms. I think you'll find it becomes so much easier. Yes, it still requires time and effort, but you're not having to constantly reinvent the wheel. You're not constantly have to come up with new topics. Everything's really done for you. You're just having to do the work to, put it into that new format. So let me know if that makes sense or if you have any questions before we hop off, because I wanted that to be the last piece there so you could see very transparently that is the strategy we're using in my business, and that's how I'm creating content. And that's how I'm able to I put out a fuck ton of content, y'all. And that's how I'm able to put out as much content as I do, which again is so important for all the reasons we talked about at the beginning of the live stream, for that relationship building, that know, like, and trust, which has really helped me to not just get fully booked, but to stay fully booked and to have a wait list and to continue bringing clients. But it also, because I am fully booked, it needs to be something that I can do consistently with ease without burning out. And so what we're talking about here with the SCOBY and the sourdough starter, which Courtney said, there has to be a way for you, if you're in the same place, where this can be something you can keep doing repetitively. Otherwise, you will feel like a production company. You will feel burnt out. And I don't want anyone here feeling burnt out. So I want you to see that's how you can do it in a way where there's just a lot more ease in the in the content creation process. Just thinking here, is there anything else I wanted to share? I think that was everything there. Just checking to make sure you all don't have any questions, but I'll give a quick recap here for all of you. So just as a recap, content is, we're gonna say content's queen because I am a lady, but content can also be king if you're a male. Content is not the only way to market. It is not the only way to build relationships. Relationships are really that core center of your profitability and your sustainability in business, but content marketing is a very powerful vehicle for building those relationships that know, like, and trust, and that consistency in terms of consistency of message and that congruence that is so important for having people come into your world that are ready to buy from you and that really trust you and see you as that expert, as someone they can, feel safe giving their money to in the online space. It's a way that, they kind of test ride you, that sounds weird, test out your business, get that free sample before investing money and before having to put skin in the game. And then in terms of just really practically some things to start thinking about in your business is if we're looking at content as a relationship building tool, and that's something you want to use in your business to deepen and strengthen those relationships, taking a look at really how we build relationships offline and seeing how you can apply that in your business through your content and thinking about, okay, so what are those micro connections you're using content? Where are you showing up to have those micro connections, and what does that look like for you in your business? And how frequent is that? What are you committed to? We're talking about like, hey honey, how are you? Those check-ins. For me, that is daily content on social media. It is written form. For you, that might be something different. Maybe it is Instagram stories every day. But what does that look like? Or maybe it's 3 times a week. Again, it doesn't have to be daily, but what does that look like? What are those micro pieces of content for you? Then what are your relationship deepeners? How are you putting those deposits into the relationship bank, Joel Gottman style, in your business, and really having some more face-to-face time? It doesn't literally have to be your face. It might be in a blog post. What does that look like for you? What is the easy way for you to do that? What is that frequency for you? Again, I do this weekly. I like to set up a weekly date with y'all. Maybe you don't need to do weekly, but what does that look like for you? And then for some of you, especially for those of you who have higher ticket offers, starting to think about, is there an opportunity for me to have a relationship booster, a conversion event, a deeper form of content where I'm asking for a little skin in the game and where I'm really showing up deep, to go deep dive into a topic, to really demonstrate that value, to build up a deeper level of trust, and to really speed up the relationship process. I think of those as relationship crack. That is like, if you've been in a relationship and y'all do go on a romantic getaway, it's like you just quickly get so much closer than you ever could on a bunch of dinner dates. So same there with content. Is there an opportunity for that in your business? Thinking about it through that lens, and then what does that look like for you? And then just putting that bow on it, and then taking just a look at the way you're doing this really strategically, and just in terms of your leveraging your time. How can you use an idea once? How can you create a piece of content once and have it become that mother SCOBY, that sourdough starter, and use it in as many ways as possible? This will also be great for those of you who have a team or who are looking at bringing on team, because when you do this, it makes it a lot easier for your team to support you in the repurposing of your content as well, which is a lot of what my team helps me with. Okay, I hope that was helpful for you. I hope it was valuable to hear just some of those practicals as well as the way I think about content. If you're watching on the replay, throw any questions at me. So happy to answer them. A few things I referenced for those of you who want to dive into this deeper. You can still sign up for Sellout without feeling like a sellout. It is a free 6-week course. We are talking all about the art of selling with heart in a way that gets you paid. It is a full-length course completely for free. I'll make sure there's a link. If you go to the top of the group, you can sign up for it there, and I'll make sure we drop a link in the replay here as well. I would love to have you. If you sign up now, you'll still get access to week 1 and 2, and we'll start week 3 next week, but you'll get links to catch up where you missed off. I do have a do-it-yourself content course. It's $49, which is really more about actually creating the content in a way that allows you to stand out and to connect and to convert more. It is a 5-part course. It is $49. I'll drop a link for that as well. I think it's fucking brilliant. Many of my clients all get it. If you're one of my clients, you get all this for free, so don't you dare pay for it. But many of my clients have said how helpful that course is. So I'll drop a link for that as well. And if any of you want to chat more about your content creation, your marketing strategy, your sales strategy, and your mindset, that is what I do. I am really, really good at what I do, y'all. I help my clients tremendously. We have a really great time. My clients are kicking ass and I love them. I have very limited availability. I think we have an intensive in December and we can open up one spot in December, and then everything else is looking into February because we already have some wait lists for January. So I'll put a link for a discovery call if that's something you would like to chat about. I would love to connect with you and to deepen our relationship in that way so I can support you to build, grow, and scale a business that is profitable, that you are wildly in love with. Let me read these comments and then I will, you guys have been hanging out with me for an hour. Thank you. Let's see. Vanessa says, you are amazing. Thank you. Thankful I caught this live. This made so much sense for me. Oh, thank you for reflecting that. That means the world to me. I'm so happy this was helpful and valuable. Keith says, thanks for the recap. Fiona says, great. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you. I bought it as soon as I saw the email. I'm so happy that you bought it. Let me know how you like, content that stands out and sells. Let me know how you like it. I would love to hear your feedback on that. And I hope it's really helpful for you and that you love it. Y'all, thank you so much for being here with me. Content's one of my favorite topics. I love you so much. I am so grateful for all of you spending time with me, hanging out with me, deepening our relationship together. I will see you next week. We'll have another topic and I will see some of you inside the free course Sell Out Without Feeling Like a Sellout. Bye, y'all.